So much for having me, and thank you everyone who has given up their time tonight to come and listen to me natter. This is probably the 20th event in relation to my book that I've done now, but it never gets any less daunting. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm going to try and share my presentation now. Hopefully, technology is on my side, and um, and then we'll get going. So I think that's that there, and then I'll make it bigger whenever I can. Perfect. But yes, like I was saying, thank you so much for having me here tonight. I'm just going to start off by giving a little bit of an introduction about myself and the book, and then I'm going to go on to kind of recite a load of different amazing wildlife encounter memories from Rathlin, followed by a few different readings from my book, which I have here, and I know a lot of you will have read, so sorry if I'm repeating myself, but hopefully it'll be a little bit more magical actually being read out loud. So, without further ado, I am Ruby, as you know, and I am a writer, campaigner, and ecologist. Actually, most recently got my master's in ecology at Queen's a few months ago. But I've been campaigning for nature and involved in nature conservation charities since I was about 13, 14 years old. So, way over 10 years now. And I just like to do whatever I can, wherever I can, to help whoever I can campaign for nature. Obviously, my biggest achievement to date, personally, I feel, is this book, my child, Rathlin a Wildlife. That's on the kind of introduction page. It's a map of Rathlin and everything I found while I was there. But it didn't just magically happen overnight. So, where it all started, and a bit about my journey to being an author and where I am now. Obviously, that isn't the life-size cover, it's a massive one. So I've loved books and nature for as long as I can remember, but it's quite an unusual relationship. I haven't always been amazing at reading and writing in school. I haven't always had the most amazing access to nature. So to be here today has taken a labor of love. So for example, when I was in school, I might not have got A's in English, but actually was told that I was pretty bad at some points, but I was quite stubborn and I loved it. So I always carried on at home and kind of motivated by the people around me to carry on drawing and writing. I just kind of created that passion into what it is today. And being along the seaside, I mean, I kind of highlight this in my book. I grew up in a relatively nature-full place, but there was concrete pavement along the beach and never much wildlife out right ahead of me in the sea. It actually took a bit of effort to go and try and find some proper wildness. But growing up, I thought this place was incredibly wild. I thought this was nature. And it wasn't until I started working on the wildlife boats in Cornwall, but ultimately started working on Rathlin that I realised what actually true wildness was. So I knew that I wanted to work in an incredibly wild places, having worked on the wildlife boats in Cornwall, but I won't give any spoilers away, needing to move to Northern Ireland about 4 or 5 years ago now. I didn't want to kind of lose a job that gave me so much purpose. So I set out to find something in this corner of the world. And the first thing I came across was to be the officer at the Westside Seabird Reserve. And I was so stubborn, I didn't even apply for anything else. This was the only thing I wanted to do. And I mean, luckily, I managed to get it because otherwise I wouldn't have had a job. And incredible things began to happen quite quickly. On my first day, full day on Rathlin, I went for an amazing hike to the West Lighthouse, even way before it was open. And there was two tailed sea eagles flying around my head. And I just thought this was incredible because where I'd grown up in Poole, I mean, it's an amazing place, but I tried to find white-tailed sea eagles several times. I'd been on all the Facebook pages, turned on all the notifications to be alerted when they were in the area, and always failed. And yet, on my first day on Rathlin, there they were flying around my head. I was actually a little bit nervous. I was eating a sandwich on the cliffs, and anyone who's seen a white-tailed sea eagle knows how massive they are and can feel quite intimidating. So that was incredible. And I didn't just keep a diary, and also the diary wasn't just a pen to paper, it was in the form of WhatsApp voice notes to myself, it was in the form of notes on my iPhone and the physical pen and paper. But there was also a sketchbook. And while these ones, a lot of these have been kind of scanned in and done up a bit on Procreate, they're all from my diary that I had on Rathlin. And during that time, I think I collated at least way over 100 drawings. So these are some of my most favorite ones just here, but there'll be a lot more kind of throughout the rest of the presentation. And I knew I wanted these to be within the book, and actually the one of them that you can see here now with the puffins is the front cover image. So that just had a little bit more work done to it, and that was put onto the front cover with some colour, which I love that I was able to do my own cover. That was really special. So I'm going to go through some of my most favourite wildlife encounters on Rathlin. I'm sure a lot of people here have been to Rathlin, but if not, you need to go this summer. I'm going to kind of list my top moments. I mean, you might not be able to get all of them when you go to the island, especially depending on the time of year that you go. But I would really just strive to try and find these moments. So the first is the Guillemot Jumplings. Now, this was just probably one of the best nights of my life. Here, perched on the edge, this photo wasn't actually at Westlight. It was a little bit further around the cliffs from that, but there was still some Guillemots jumping from here. And I mean, obviously, I can't ask you all here right now if you know what happens. I'm just gonna have to explain it all, but hopefully, I'm not talking to people who know. But these are amazing birds. They're part of the auk family, and their young jump from over 100 feet high on the cliffs to the water below. And it's just an incredible sight to see whenever you followed these birds the whole summer long. You've seen the parents reconvene, you've watched them lay their egg and defend off kind of their precious young from predators. And so 6 months on, actually, with the guillemots, it's about 2.5 to 3 months from when they first start properly breeding. Um, the day comes for them to fledge, and it's so emotional, but it's very magical. So the dad typically will go down to the water below and call, and its call is as unique as my fingerprint is to me. And so that one chick out of 150,000 guillemots will know what its dad sounds like, and it will be drawn down to his voice in the sea below. And the mum will gently guide the guillemot jumpling to a ledge that's kind of deemed safe enough from where it will jump. And it's just an amazing sight to see. The Westlight Seabird Reserve is hoping to put on another jumpling night, so hopefully you can go and see this, because especially if you get a sunset, it will be one of the best nights of your life. That's the East Lighthouse, an amazing place that I cycle to often for sunsets. You can see the Mull of Kintyre and Isla there very clearly. One of my most favourite wildlife encounters ever in my life was this incredible moment. Ulster Wildlife actually kindly shared it at the time on all of their social media, and it gained international kind of headlines on newspapers because it was so rare. And this is something that you might not get to see if you go to Rathlin. But having worked on the wildlife boats for several years in Cornwall, myself and all of my colleagues really, really wanted to see this amazing animal. This is a thresher shark. It's a 6 meter long shark where half of the length of its body is its tail. And from a faraway glance, you think it'd be a dolphin or something, but no, it is a shark. And I saw this incredible animal halfway across Rathlin Sound, from Rathlin Island to Ballycastle on the Spirit of Rathlin ferry. And it leapt out of the water. I thought it was a dolphin, took some pictures, realised it was a shark, and the rest is history. And no one really believed me until I got the pictures downloaded and uploaded onto social media, and then it really kind of exploded. But I did get a lot of people telling me that they thought it was some sort of deep fake image because the shark really is so rare. It's critically endangered on the red list, and you really only find them in deep, deep water. So it was also pretty unusual to see it so shallow. Even though the waters surrounding Rathlin are deemed pretty deep, it was still quite shallow for where it should be, which might be something to do with climate change or its diet or prey availability. Obviously, not sure. But yeah, it could be a concerning thing. But just cried there and then because I knew I would probably never see one again. And I think it was the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group told me at the time that it was the first recorded sighting of a thresher shark in Northern Irish waters, which was a very, very exciting moment. There was incredible moments on Rathlin, hearing the beautiful music and culture from the island, from music sessions that would happen impromptu on Charlie, my friend over there's boat, to just hearing a tin whistle on the cliff somewhere. The island is full of artists and musicians, and if you're lucky enough to be there when that sort of thing is happening, often they'll just invite you on to the boat, give you a beer. It's a very welcoming place, or at least I found while I was there. Although while I was there, it was a little bit quieter because it was just post-COVID lockdown and the island was just beginning to open up again. So that was a really lovely experience to get that kind of human interaction after so long tucked away in my house with the lockdowns. There was also some incredible encounters with species who I had never seen or had forgotten existed. In the book, I highlight quite a lot shifting baseline syndrome, which is this new term that's been coined that describes a new state of nature that each generation is getting accustomed to, or not even each generation, but throughout our lifetimes, a new state of nature that we're getting accustomed to. And this is a picture from a day where I had a really special sighting. I came across a pair of skylarks dancing above my head, and this was really special because I hadn't seen them properly singing and dancing above my head like this since I was a child on the Southwest Coast Path. And I mean, that memory only kind of was shot to the front of my mind when I heard these birds. When I first saw them, I didn't know what they were. And it then came to me what they were. And after a quick Google, I actually found that they had perilously declined where I'd grown up in Poole. So no wonder I'd forgotten who they were, but I thanked Rathlin that day for reminding me. And another species that kind of really ties into this, I think, is the corncrake. Actually, tomorrow, really excitingly, I'm hosting my old RSVP team on the farm I am currently living on, which I'll talk a bit more about in a little bit. But we are doing a nettle dig, and I've been involved in giving a corncrake a home project for the last kind of 3, 4 years now. And it's basically to get nettles from the mainland planted on Rathlin to provide even better habitat than the pretty good habitat it already has, which is why it's only breeding on Rathlin. So for anyone that doesn't know the corncrake, it kind of I think it looks a little bit like a chicken with a that can fly long distances. It's got an incredible noise. It sounds like someone scraping a pen along a fence or a gate or flicking a comb. And it's incredibly loud as well. And one of my quite saddest memories, I think, of that summer was coming back from Rathlin to the farm I now live on and having a conversation with my partner's father, whose face lit up when I started talking about the corncrake. At first, he wasn't sure what it was, and then realised that actually this animal had existed here on the farm once, but he hadn't heard it in about 20, 30 years. But it used to be here, but he forgot that it used to be here. So I think Rathlin is a really special place where things that we might have forgotten about or that we, that used to be in our lives actually come round again. And that's so important because if we don't know what our landscapes smell, sound, and look like, how can we know what to fight for? So that's why storytelling, I think, is so important. And it's why I was just delighted to bring some of those stories into the book. Some adventures, some moth trapping. I've realised I've been rambling for a very long time, so I'm going to get cracking. And I kept these memories and experiences recorded safely while I cracked on with life. So after Rathlin, I got a new job at the RSPB working in their policy and advocacy team. This was myself with a few other maybe quite well-known young campaigners across the island of Ireland. There's Dara McAnulty here, Georgia from Fridays for Future. And that was a really rewarding job. With the seabirds always at the back of my mind, it was very easy to campaign for nature and keep shouting for them, and also move to the farm. And I kept all these memories quite close to my chest, all these drawings were tucked away, and it wasn't until friends and family actually told me that I should share my experiences. And that was a point where I really started to believe in myself. I kind of had a lot of imposter syndrome leading up to the creation of the book. I thought, well, at that point in time, I'm not a scientist. How can I possibly write a book about nature, about Rathlin? I'm not an expert. But then I started to realize that actually there was lots of different narratives that would have made this book appealing and quite maybe important. It was the narrative of a young woman in nature going through traumatic times and healing from them on an island, um, experiencing nature in a time of such unprecedented nature loss, harassment. There's so many different kind of experiences and narratives that I talk about. And yeah, it wasn't really until actually that I was talking with all of my colleagues and friends and family that they really pushed me, and I kind of was like, right, let's do this. So I used that passion and love for writing and for illustrating to bring about and collate all of these experiences. And here we are. So this is just a little example of what that took. Not only did it take chronologically ordering all of these encounters and memories and diary entries and scribbles into a like chronological line, but also getting my illustrations up to scratch and good enough for the book. So I kind of mentioned earlier how a lot of my drawings used to be a rough sketch and then they were kind of neatened up on Procreate. So that's what you can see in the middle boxes here. And my cat Willow on the bottom, she was a very great emotional support. And I can just say she doesn't eat birds, otherwise I would really struggle. So that was the process of getting to where I am now, and I'm so happy I went for it because obviously I now have this amazing possession in front of me, and I did it. And it's been the most incredible 4 month roller coaster ride. As a first time author, I have written and done writing for magazines and for the RSPB and different charities for several years, but I've never really gone out there in my own name in the kind of in the real world with something like this. And it's just been so well received from the Rathlin community, and friends and family and colleagues and people I have never met in across the UK and Ireland and the world. The amount of times I see pictures of my book in Jamaica or the Arctic or Australia, and it just gives me such joy because it's traveled so far and I cannot believe it. So yeah, that's kind of how I got here. And I kind of always wanted there to be three key aims from releasing this book. And even now, I just that's what I always talk about at events when people ask me like kind of key things of why did you write it, what messages you want to get across. This is kind of the top three that I've realised throughout the book tour. So it's to raise awareness, but also give people joy. That's the first one. And I think Megan McCubbin, the Spring Watch presenter, who did a really beautiful foreword for the book, summed it up so well. She said, this book highlights the pure joy of experiencing nature, but is expertly balanced with the reality that we could and are losing the battle to protect it. So that's what I wanted. A lot of nature books that I've read personally have a lot of fear and just make me feel scared and anxious. And as much as I wanted it to be real and raise awareness of everything that's happening to our natural world, I also wanted to give people a bit of escapism and enjoy. The second thing I wanted to do was tell a personal story. It took me a while to get out of my own head and realize that actually maybe my story would help other people, a story of loss, grief, love, so many different things. There's lots of rites of passage, moving country, being young. And I feel like actually young or old could relate to it. And so I wanted something that could relate to others, even though I'm moving to an island, which is something that very few people get to do. There's a lot of things in there that I feel like people will relate to. And the third thing I really wanted to do was communicate science, but take people on an adventure. I want to a lot of the books that I read again in the nature and climate realm are incredible, and they get across what they want to very, very well. They have all the facts and stats, but for someone, I don't know, maybe a little bit like me, ADHD, and doesn't have a very long attention span, I maybe want to be kind of drawn in with a story that feels like fiction, but actually it's real. and yeah, just have a bit more of a narrative to it. I do love a nature fact, but when it's nature fact after nature fact, I might switch off after a while. So I want to communicate what's happening, but also take people on an adventure. And I feel like hopefully I've done those things. So, to give an example of this, I have a little book reading here, and it's from chapter one, Arriving. So, hopefully, I can take you with me to the beautiful Westlight Seabird Centre RSPB Reserve. And please tell me what you think after, especially if you've read the book. So, after spending a few hours sorting out the visitor centre, Rochelle asked me to clean the West Lighthouse and neighbouring seabird platform. Eager to get closer to the birds, I hurried down the 89 steep sea cliff steps and two paths that led to the seabird platform. I was met by a symphony of sound as I came to the first bend in the stairway. Then some of the 250,000 seabirds that migrate here every year came into view, and the first sea stack appeared. Here, on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean, beside one of the largest seabird colonies in the world, the wildlife was tossing and turning, hustling and bustling. The cliffs were alive with life. Descending down the penultimate path to the seabird viewing platform, the cove opened up further, and my sensations were overwhelmed. The smell of guano punched me in the face. It was something I would eventually become noseblind to after countless hours on these cliffs, but in that moment it took my breath away. Readjusting to the wildness surrounding me, standing in awe, I felt my puffy face well up and a tear roll down my cheek. It hadn't been easy deciding to come here, so arriving to this view felt like a sigh of relief. Now facing hundreds of miles of sheer Atlantic wilderness, I was already glad we'd made a decision. It was as if had someone had placed me in the middle of the climax shot of a wildlife documentary. Senses readjusted, clinging to the safety bars that lined the top of the sheer seabird platform, I set out to identify everything and anything I could. Cleaning the centre, ready for reopening, was the last thing on my mind. A magical mayhem, fulmars everywhere, circling the bay with a stiff upper wing, asserting their dominance. Kittiwakes squawking at neighbours, competing for the best patch and partner on the cliff. Razorbills high above my head, with safety in numbers, and razor, razor sharp white eyeliner, now that is a mouthful, that can stand out from a mile away. Guillemots so exposed. There were so many of them, 150,000 to be exact, lining every square inch of the stacks. Adrenaline coursing through my blood, I stood alone on the edge of this island, the wildest place I'd ever been. I realised that I hadn't actually seen the bird Rathlin is best known for. Using my granddad's old binoculars, I scanned from side to side before realising the puffins were hiding in plain sight. Everything else was happening above, but the puffins were below. Lining the grassy floor, there were tons of burrows, and beside every burrow, puffins! I saw more appear, and pretty soon I could see hundreds. This was brilliant, but I knew that there should have been many more. Puffins have declined massively in recent decades, and if trends carry on the way they are, we could lose 89% of them by 2050, nearly 90%. Like everything in nature, seabirds have a vital role to play in a functioning, healthy ecosystem. When seabirds poo, guano washes into the ocean, it acts like an ocean fertilizer, stimulating the growth of phytoplankton, the organism that produces over half the oxygen we breathe. Even this poo, something that most of us wouldn't even know or conceive to be important, is vital for our survival. I watched as the puffins waddled and tumbled around, clowns of the sea and collectively called a circus. These brightly billed beauties brought another tear to my watery eyes. They have patterns of life, millions of years old, ingrained into their psyche. Their ancestors were from here, they were born here, and so they returned here, and so will their young. They have thrived on land, air, and sea for centuries, but now humans are messing things up. Extreme weather patterns, depleted fish stocks, pollution, disease, invasive species all affect their ability to live the way they have and should for centuries. A puffin flew up the cliff and landed by my side. I noticed that it had a distinguishable scratch to the left side of its beak. As I studied it, I thought about how hard it had been for me to leave home and come here, but that's exactly what this puffin had done, with a million more obstacles to face than me. Side by side with this ruler-sized creature, who was no more than 25 centimeters tall, already emotional, I knelt down and whispered, "I'm trying to help," to the intrigued little bird. I watched it launch off the platform as it free fell to a vertical world before catching wind under its wing to circle the lighthouse. I felt compelled to follow. Fiddling with old, clattering keys to unlock the lighthouse door, I ran down hundreds of steps that would take me to the lower level of the cliff, closer to the puffin. The Rathlin West Lighthouse is famously upside down, and it didn't take me long to reach the light room on the ground floor, which glows a fluorescent red colour. A big wooden door confronted me. When I opened it, I saw a view so vast I'd never felt more exposed. Closer to the sea stacks, everything was louder and smellier. The blue of the ocean below was more intense, and the wind was so wild it drew sea spray up the entire cliff face, slamming it into the 100-year-old lighthouse. Getting drenched with salty ocean water, I felt like I was back on the wildlife boats I used to work on. The horizon was bigger and more daunting down here, and I'd never felt more joyfully insignificant. Leaving the safety of the lighthouse, I too had launched off into the puffin's vertical world, with towering cliffs surrounding me. I found the puffin with a scratch in its face, on a grassy section of cliff. With a tilted head and eyes so curious, it hopped down a slope, and of course, I followed. I crawled across the top of the grassy bank to keep it in view, but halted after a few seconds, as there was a 60-foot drop, and I felt weak with vertigo. I saw the puffin's burrow just feet away, and then the puffin's partner emerged. I watched as a curious courtship played out. The birds tapped beaks to reaffirm their bond. This was spectacular. Using no imagination whatsoever, I named them Puff and Finn, Puff being the adventurous bird with the chipped bill that I'd first met. Swapping roles, they are very progressive birds. Puff waddled to her burrow below, while Finn swooped down to the sea to start fishing. In that moment, I noticed another puffin waddling about with a huge catch of sand eels sharing the same ledge. It's unusual to see a puffin on its own without a burrow, and so I watched this bird for another hour or so as it flew back and forth to sea. Every time it came back to land, it sat among an open stretch of sea pinks, gobbling up its catch, keeping it all to itself. With its peculiar behaviour, a third puffin stood out to me, and I named it Busy Lizzie. Intrigued to find out more about her, I knew I'd be venturing here often. But a noise chimed in the lighthouse, knocking me out of my wildlife trance. The public weren't allowed to access this part of the reserve when I was on Rathlin. There had been maintenance work carried out on the lighthouse, and it was a bit of a tip. Worried I'd get caught there evading my cleaning responsibilities, I hurried back up the hundreds of steps of the lighthouse and the further 89 steps to the visitor centre. I felt a ball of exhausted excitement in my chest when I got back. I was beginning to truly connect to this place, all these miles away from any previous normality. Watching the puffins was like looking through a window into another wild life. And I will shut up there. But I know that was quite a long passage, so Kelly, if you want to do some questions now and then some questions at the end, I can, or also give me a time check.
Well, you've got about, well, another maybe it's just 5 past, coming up to 5 past 8. So another 10 minutes or so, and then we can go to questions. You want to do that?
Perfect. Yeah, let's
And
do it
let,
like that.
yeah,
That's great.
okay.
I think I was over ambitious and I have a few more slides in here that well, definitely won't use, so just ignore them. Um, and that was another little reading. I basically ended up reading two extra pages than I was meant to then, so we'll just skip through these. But another thing I wanted to do was incorporate my life and my kind of story into the narrative. So a lot all the way through, I won't read it now, but you'll get this feeling of what's happening to the seabirds and the atmosphere on the cliffs is also the atmosphere in my life. So hopefully that carries through. And the third thing I was going to read out was the and please, please read this. Even if you have just got the book and want to read through chronologically in one of the last chapters, where there's a beautiful illustration of a fulmar. It's the if you can't wait, there's an amazing kind of passage where I watch this fulmar chick leaving. And it's super, super emotional because I'd watched it for the longest amount of time there, and it had faced probably far more than any other bird. And it's just amazing to watch it fly off. So, but I won't read that out now too. And that's the little fulmar chick just there. So, where I'm at now, I have a dog, which she's called Isla, named after the island, and also just because I love islands, and Isla means from a real day on. Living in a caravan on Ballyconley Farm. I recently finished my master's, where it took me out to another island in Canada, which was very exciting. I honestly could write another book about that, but I won't. I'll have a break. And I was also researching humpbacks, and I'm doing a discussion about that at the Blue Horizons Marine Conference for Ulster Wildlife next week. So if you want to hear about that, you can go to the other talk. But I've been obviously very busy doing the book tour. I've started a recent position at the Irish News, writing on behalf of nature and climate issues across the island of Ireland. And the biggie, I've taken on a nature-friendly farm with my partner Craig, and this is also something I wanted to share because we need volunteers. So this spring we're launching a community farm, and you're really welcome to get in touch if you'd like to get involved. You can find us on Instagram, that which is at Ballyconley Farm. We also have a website, and all the contact details are on there, so you should find us if you look us up on Facebook or just on the internet. And we're basically setting up some polytunnels and providing a growing space for people to come and connect with other like-minded people to get out into nature because I feel like our farm is a bit more of a gem for wildlife than maybe other places. And just yeah, have some nice time outside and green and blue spaces for your mental health, connect with people, and just contribute to something good, which is everything that it says there. But here is some amazing wildlife we've seen on the farm in the past few years, from snipe to birds of prey like buzzards and all sorts of pollinators, little fox babies, you name it. There's just been some incredible species, and a lot of these species pictured here actually weren't on the farm even just 5 years ago, but from doing some really simple things, they've come back. You know, if you give nature space, it will take it. Um, and I just like to finish by kind of maybe providing some actions for people to take on in their own lives. I mean, if you're all also wildlife members, you probably do all of these things already. This is one of the illustrations from the last section of my book, Acts Now for Nature. And it's a little almost kind of map of Northern Ireland. You can kind of just see underneath and all of the different species that you can find here. And I'm just really inspired for people to find the nature on their doorstep, connect to it, and help to protect it. You know, this is what also wildlife is about, but not enough people actually get involved with stuff on the ground or even just sharing something on social media does a lot. And so, yeah, if there's like the top three things I would say that you can do is to get involved, like actively involved with your local conservation charity, like what I'm doing tomorrow with giving corncrakes a home for the RSPB. All of this kind of work on the ground really helps charities like Also Wildlife, RSPB, you name it. Getting involved in a bit of activism. Obviously, that's maybe something a lot of people haven't tried. However, actually, I wouldn't put that past you guys. There was an amazing turnout to the first protest I organised when I got to Northern Ireland. Over 3,000 people at the COP26 march. So actually, I reckon everyone here probably went to that. Um, and then I would also just say looking after your mental health is an act for nature because you can't always be everywhere all the time. That's something I've learned in recent years. You actually do burn out if you just carry on fighting, fighting, fighting. So you have to get out into green and blue spaces for the pure just benefit of that being good for your mental health, and everything else will follow. So that leads me on to questions. If anybody has any questions, I would be delighted to answer them. I'm sure you've heard me ramble for long enough.
Thank you so much, Ruby. That was really, really good. And your illustrations are absolutely beautiful, all the
Oh, thank
illustrations
you.
you've done for the book. And I really, really enjoyed your reading as well. So that was really lovely,
Oh,
actually. We probably
thank
might
you.
have time for another reading. I would say we're 10 past 8. There's a lot, if there's lots of
Oh,
burning, I don't have any questions in the chat at this stage. So maybe if we could take some questions and then you might have time to do another wee reading from your book.
yes,
I
of
wanted to do
course.
that. So has
Yeah.
anyone got a question if they'd like to just going to see if I can see all of the if you can stop maybe sharing your screen there, Ruby, and I can see if I can
Yes,
see.
all good. Also, before I stop sharing my screen, shameless plug, if anybody doesn't have the book but wants a really useful link to get it, I did put some QR codes on the screen, just to your typical ones, but also the book should be available on at your any of your local kind of independent bookshops, Waterstones, and on any online site too. So, but if that's helpful, I can leave that out for a few seconds. If
Perfect.
not,
Just if anybody has, I can't see all the people unless the.
I know I wish I could see
But
everyone.
if anyone has any questions, can you raise your hand? There's little reactions down the bottom, so you just have to you can just put your hand up, raise your hand. It says, or you can if you want to do that, then I can see if anyone has any questions to ask for Ruby about her experiences on Rathlin. I really enjoyed hearing about the little um about the thresher shark and everything. And was it the little, yeah, that was really, really interesting. And that
I could
night,
have gone on for
what was the
3 hours.
night again? That was it wasn't the pufflings, it was the little what was it again? That when they all come out at night for their little when they go into
Oh,
the
the jumpling night.
dumplings. Yeah.
Yes,
That
incredible.
sounds like an amazing experience to see.
It is, and the sound, it's like no other. I mean, going to the Seabird Centre in the daytime with 250,000 seabirds is, smelly and noisy enough. But then you go at this kind of dusk period in the cover of darkness, they're a little bit safer. And with safety in numbers, they all just kind of, over the course of 2 or 3 nights, they tend to just completely head off to sea. And because their parents are calling from the sea below, the mum's trying to get the guillemot to the edge safely, and the young are shouting as well. You have all these voices just in one place screaming. And I often wonder if the other seabirds are kind of like, guys, like, quiet down a bit. What's going on?
And does the RSPB organize like can you go and see that? Is it just something you do yourself independently, or is there like an organized thing you can go and
I mean, when I was there, I was lucky enough to just kind of stay a little bit later that night. But in recent years, they actually have started organising a jumpling night. So please go if you
that
can. I
sounds
mean,
so
I
good.
would recommend staying over, either camping or in a B&B to
Brilliant.
get.
We've got a few things in the chat here. I don't see any hands up, so
Yes.
I'll go through the chat here, Ruby. Ruby, this is from Rob. Can you expand more on the work you did? Obviously, this is not about Rathlin, but it is quite interesting actually about the humpback whales in British Columbia.
Yes, of
That's
course. I
from
did
Rob.
brush over that quite quickly because I thought people would want to hear just all Rathlin. But yeah, I just this summer for about 4 months was out in Canada off the northeast coast on actually a tinier island off the northeast coast of Vancouver Island, and I went out there as part of my master's to conduct a research project on one of my most favorite animals in the world, the humpback whale, looking at basically the impact of vessel distance and speed on humpback behavior, because we're in my kind of study area, and actually this is beginning to happen along the west coast of Ireland as well. There has been a rapid increase in humpbacks in a very short space of time, and I was just kind of studying the conflict between vessels and whales and what could actually be done to help the whales, because the current law in place with the distance regulation just basically I found wasn't working. The distance regulation was about 100 meters from a humpback you can stay away from, but when, these animals are nearly 20 meters long, 100 meters isn't very far away, and that can change very quickly. So, I found that actually the true distance that really you could stay away from a humpback to create no behavior change and it not impact it in any way was beyond 200 meters. So drastically different to what the regulations were. And luckily, actually, there's a marine mammal review, and hopefully, my research is going to go on to help the humpbacks and change the policy. So, yeah, that's a little synopsis. And it meant living on a very remote island for quite some time again. So I love doing that.
Thanks, Ruby. The rest are about Rathlin, actually, but yes, your experience in British Columbia was pretty amazing. I loved seeing all the pictures and everything from that. And Dervla in Sweden. Oh gosh, sorry, I can't speak to it. So what a lovely presentation and reading, Ruby. Thanks from Dervla checking in from Sweden. John wants to know, in your experience, what's the best month to visit Rathlin? Because obviously the seabirds leave, don't they, around July time, so you want to be going before then.
So they all leave at and come at different times, but I would say the best time to get them all there and to get like the
Mm,
best action from the seabirds is June, July,
mm,
and if you want to risk it, the start of August, because the puffins might be gone, they might
mm.
not be gone, but they also might be on the edge of going, and it's really cool at the start of August if you get to see them rafting, because they'll all just hang around on the water below for a few days before they leave in huge numbers, and it's just quite rare to see them all just bobbing around and they're just kind of getting some rest before they head out and make the journey back out to sea. And it's quite rude actually. The puffin adults kind of just hope that their chick does okay and leave before they do. So it's you have to kind of tell them when their parents come back the next year if their chick made it. But yeah, very different to the jumplings.
Yes,
But yeah,
yeah,
that's the
and
best
that's
time.
brilliant. Yeah, on the jumplings, actually, going back to when Deirdre wants to know when's the best time to see the jumplings do what you were talking about. When's that?
Yeah, I would say the last week of July is really, really good week to see the jumplings. That's usually, I mean, that's when I saw. And also if you go onto the Rathlin Sticky Beak website, they've got some amazing kind of charts of when they've noticed that things have happened at certain times of the year. Because actually, it has changed slightly over the years, but you should be able to see kind of like a mean times to when they do it. But I would say the last week of July.
Perfect. Rhiannon wants to know, has said she hasn't read the book, but she'll definitely be getting it, which is great. Yeah, any more book purchases would be great for Ruby with me. And do you have any experiences of invertebrates on the island, Ruby?
Oh my gosh, yes, there was an incredible array of insect life. Oh my gosh, I mean,
Your moths,
from
obviously, you had some of the moths there, didn't you, which were really impressive.
there was amazing moth trapping nights. Apparently there was a regular kind of moth trapping night on the island before the lockdowns, but it stopped. And then when I went over, I found out from Ali and Liam, kind of Rathlin power couple as I describe it. Liam is a warden on Rathlin. He has been for about 30 years, and he managed to find the old moth trap, blow off the cobwebs, and I used it every night for a solid week at one point. Found just an array of different colours and shapes and sizes and names, which I'll never remember all of the names of because there's thousands of moths and there's still moths being found all the time, like new species. So moths were amazing. Saw different types of damselfly. Yeah, there was honestly so much to see flying around, and I think in one day I counted 60 species on one walk, from literally morning to evening. At which I don't think I've ever been able to do on the mainland. So that just shows how much life there is from insects to mammals, you name it.
Fantastic. And I mean, that the plant life, obviously, the orchids and Rathlin are amazing. I think that was really
Mm,
impressed with the wildflowers. It's just really stunning when you walk from the lighthouse back down to the boat. It's just amazing.
it is.
Um, so I'm just going to go through some of the rest of these. From Sharman, thank you so much for a lovely, positive talk. Much appreciated in this grim world. You're so inspirational. Please keep doing all these wonderful things. That's lovely. From Sharman. Lewis, hi Ruby, absolutely fascinating talk. Thank you. I saw on one of your photographs a bird sitting on your shoulder. How close did you get to the animals in Rathlin? I think that bird was at your farm, Ruby. Was it? Do you have a particular favorite?
Yes, yes. I mean, I wouldn't always advocate for trying to get as close to wildlife as you possibly can, but in this case, it was a starling. This is included in the book. The following year, a starling had fallen from its nest really, really young, and I do partake in wildlife medic volunteering for like the USPCA and different charities. So I kind of knew what I was doing, but I mean, if you want to get involved in that sort of thing, you can too. But anyway, long story short. starling fell from the nest, raised it back to health. Even when it could leave, it basically didn't. It just kind of hung around for about 2 or 3 months and always just lingered on our shoulder. We were doing gardening, whatever we were doing, it just kind of stayed. Eventually, it gradually got more confident and left and joined the flock. And now, anytime I see a beautiful starling murmuration on a crisp winter's night, I think, oh, it's Sherry the starling up there. But yeah, that's the story of the
Oh,
starling.
fantastic. Yes, how close did you get? Do you have any particular favorite animal in Rathlin? Sorry, was also Lewis was asking about that. Was there any
Yes.
particular favorite animals on Rathlin?
I mean, the puffin pair at the Lower Lighthouse Ledge, which I go on to kind of talk a lot about, Puff and Finn, it was amazing to be so close to them, and it was quite rare, which is why I documented it quite heavily because all the other birds were quite a lot lower on the cliffs. But this couple, I mean, I always tried to hide myself as best as I could because I don't want animals, I don't want to interfere in their lives. But I got this window into a different, beautiful wildlife in front of me, and I watched their antics every day and saw that actually even puffins, these animals that all look the same, have unique, different little personalities, and it was amazing to be that close and watch their lives play out.
Fantastic. Chloe is actually going to volunteer at the Puffin Sanctuary this April.
Ah,
So she said it was really great to hear your experiences. Do you have any advice on, for working in the sanctuary or staying on the island? Because obviously a lot of your time would have been spent on the West Island, but actually the East Island's really nice too, isn't it? The other side as
yes.
well.
I mean, where I was actually living was in Church Bay, kind of more towards the east side, but and working on the west, and I feel like I kind of circumnavigated navigated it by the end. But I would say bring more food than you think you're going to need. I brought a suitcase of food with me when I first arrived, and it was completely run out by the second week. And ferries. You do have to book them in advance and they can be cancelled. So I mean, if you're going to stay for, a month or 2 weeks or something like that, just be prepared. But there is like a little co-op shop that does have bits and bobs. However, you might just get one thing of mail on the side, and if that's taken, you won't get it again. So it's kind of like, a not heavily stocked shop. So just bring your favorite bits and make sure you don't run out. But if you're going for a day, I would say the biggest thing to think about is just trying to create a plan of everything you want to see because there's so much to see, and you don't want to leave and regret not going a certain place. So that's probably my two biggest tips.
Because there's a bus, isn't there a bus that takes you up to the? Because I mean, I've only ever walked, but I think there's a bus that takes you up, isn't
Those
there?
Puffin Bus,
Yeah.
and Francis, I think, still drives it. He's a great, lovely man, bald-headed Hawaiian top. You can't miss him, and he's just the spirit of Rathlin. Honestly, so funny. Yeah, just so yeah, go on the Puff and Buff. It's an amazing experience, and there's a beautiful audio that you get to listen to on the journey up. So yeah, it's honestly just the whole experience is brilliant.
And
And
even the boat over, usually you get to see something. I think we saw dolphins the last time we went over, but
yeah.
yeah, it's usually something interesting to see.
Yeah, honestly, I would say like 4 out of 5 times I've been on that ferry, I've seen something pretty
Yeah.
spectacular. So just always keep your eyes peeled.
Another question was just just a comment. Thank you very much for your informative talk. Just want to know where Ballyconnolly Farm is.
Yes, good question. It's just out, it's probably in the middle of nowhere, but the best place I can describe it is it's kind of 5 miles maybe just out of Port Glenone. Where yeah, it's kind of actually it's between Port Glenone and like Cullybackey. So it's kind of on Long Mountain Ridge on top of the hill between that. And yeah, just gonna try and have as many people come down and get involved in growing veg and reconnecting to nature as possible. So reach out if you want to get involved.
Just from Graham here was just saying he loved your book very much. Also, he said, might you consider keeping a diary of observations and drawing of how things colonize a Ballyconnolly farm? That would be another book I would love to read. Is that the next one on your
That's
list,
like,
Ruby?
I'm actually going to take a picture of this because that's the plan in the back of my mind, whether that
Really?
ever
Yeah, that would be a
happens
good
is
one, wouldn't it?
I've been like since 4 years ago since I first officially moved here. Because this book was 2021, so it was just the start of the decade, and now we're at 2025, so it's been about 4 years now. And I've kept a log ever since I moved here, and I think already it's a pretty cool tale to
Hmm.
tell. So stay tuned, who knows? But yes, do you know Colin Stafford Johnson, the wildlife camera?
Yes. No, I didn't go into all that, but yes, he was talking about Colin Stafford Johnson as well, who developed land
Oh yes, yes.
near Dublin. Yes, he's lovely, man. He did one of our he hosted one of our AGMs a few years ago, actually. It's really
And
nice.
didn't he do an amazing series
Yes, he
in
did.
the
He did. I
islands?
think, and he's very into gardening. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
He's a
No,
wild
no, no,
garden.
yeah, great person.
Yeah.
Love
And just Bridget, yeah, thank you so much, Ruby. Really inspiring and informative talk. That's from Bridget. Enjoyed it so much. I look forward to reading your book and seeing all your wonderful illustrations. So
it.
yeah, so those are. If anybody has any questions they want to ask Ruby, like you can unmute yourself and ask Ruby a question yourself. It doesn't have to go through the chat. So I don't have to chat all the time. If anybody wants to do that, is there any questions from the floor?
Can I just say that was so lovely to go through and read? Just getting all that feedback means the absolute world. You know, spending nearly 3 years from the diaries to the finished product, it never tires reading people's lovely kind of feedback
It's
and
nice to
reviews.
get that, isn't it? And
Yeah, so thank you.
I can send links through to everyone on email just to the books as well. If you know, I know you've got them as QR codes, so you wanted to, you can just people can scan those actually on the screen now. If you wanted to do that, maybe you can share that screen again, and then I'll just quickly run through our upcoming series of talks because this is the first of our series of winter talks. We have many more coming up now every week, and I'll just run through those quickly before we finish. So Ruby's just going to get up just the QR codes to buy her book. Blatant plug here for she doesn't have any discount codes though, unfortunately not.
No, but I mean, maybe also wildlife will have it on their website at some point. But I mean, if you
Yeah.
do get it off, there are some conservation organisations like the RSPB
At least
that
you've got yeah,
if
you've
you
got a few good ones there. At least you haven't just got
yeah.
Amazon up on the screen there. So we've got a few.
I know. You kind of it's annoying. They actually, to be fair, talking of discounts, Amazon, I've no idea how or why, but they've got my book at half price at the moment. So there
Wow, there you go,
you
guys.
go.
Half price book on
I
Amazon.
wish they didn't because I didn't want like
They can probably afford to do that, just really, I suppose, compared to the smaller bookshops.
I know,
Uh,
and like of your local bookshops, and especially Northern Ireland, should have it stocked, or they might have sold out, but you can get it in again. So if you want to support a local bookshop, and also on Rathlin, there's a few different gift shops that are stocking it. So
Right.
especially this summer, if you go to Rathlin, that's a really great way to support the local kind of island community. You know, buy local on Rathlin, whether it's food, my book, anything. The Puff and Bus, that's a great thing to do.
Brilliant. I'm gonna just share my screen. If you can stop sharing your screen, Ruby, I'm gonna share just the next series of talks that are coming up so that people are aware of those. Oops. So yeah, I'm just going to hide this. Pull this away. So yeah, so we've got obviously our talks will run through right through to March, and they are free for members. Small charge for non-members there. So our next one coming up is really interesting. We get asked questions about this all the time, but why do we actually bring birds? Why is it important? And obviously it's got lots of benefits in terms of trying to figure out where birds migrate, and it also really helps with conservation. So that should be really interesting. That's Stephen Fife from the Northern Ireland Environment Agency. He's in the ornithology team. That's next Wednesday. And then we have the following Wednesday, our Simon from our peatland team will be looking at our work restoring a very commercially was a commercially extracted peat site, Hawley's Bog, that we purchased a few years ago, how we're actually restoring that and bringing it back to health. Um, we've then go turning to the sea. So we've got Tori, our marine engagement officer, who's going to tell you a little bit more about our shore and eye surveys, which are surveys of the intertidal region of the shore that people can go out and actually do themselves with a little bit of training and knowledge from us. Um, Following that, we've got Robert Russell, who's an ecologist, freshwater ecologist, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the fish of Loch Ness. So some very interesting fish species in Loch Ness that are very unique to Loch Ness as well. So that'll be interesting. Then our own peatlands team again are going to be telling you all about the use of technology and how it's helping to revolutionize some of our nature conservation work. Um, we've also got another guest speaker, Owen Dalton, who's the author of The Magic of an Irish Rainforest. So that'll be some lovely imagery and illustrations or and pictures really from Irish rainforests as well, which will be fantastic. Karen Healy from the Bat Group is going to give a talk about bats, bats that we find here in Ireland, and what we can do as well to help them as well. And then finally, oh, I think I might have missed one actually. Yes, I have missed one off the list. Do forgive me. So we've got a Helping Hedgehogs one with Maureen, our Let Nature officer. So she'll be telling you all about hedgehogs and how you can help them. And we finally, after that, we have one on butterflies as well, how to create a butterfly friendly garden. So lots of talks coming up. I'll just stop sharing my screen there. So, oops. So yes, so plenty of opportunities to come along. As I said, they are free. They are recorded, these talks as well. So you will get a chance you can watch them all back again if you're a member of Ulster Wildlife too. So they will be available on our YouTube channel and we will share that out with members as well. So I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Ruby. Thank you so much, Ruby, for a really interesting talk. We've just a few more comments. Just want somebody actually just went on Amazon, Ruby William, and bought your book there
I
tonight. So that
just
was
saw
great.
that.
Thank
Oh
you.
my, I'm sorry, it's not half price, it was a
And
pound off.
we actually have Jim Wells in the house too. Jim Wells says one
Uh,
of the best ways, hi Jim, is to sail around Rathlin is the best way to see it. That'd be very nice, Jim. When are we going out with you on your boat then?
well,
Yeah.
I do a series of boat trips around
Do you?
Rathlin every year,
Oh,
and
we didn't know this.
you
Sign
get
me
very,
up.
Can we
you
could
get
we get could we get a boat trip for Ulster Wildlife members
no,
then?
no problem at all. You get you're almost within touching distance. Remember that about 70% of the seabirds in Rathlin cannot be seen from the
That's
land.
true, yeah.
They're tucked in along the North Cliffs, so you get incredibly close. I also have to plead forgiveness. I bought it today from Amazon, very
Oh,
cheap.
there you go. There's another book purchase there,
I
Ruby.
have to,
What's
Oh,
have to say that, but
thank
Yeah,
you.
I know you're right, Jim. We have organized a few trips around the Goblins, even because some of the best way to see the birds are actually from boat or from a
Yeah.
boat, really, rather than from the even from the Goblins itself. So yeah, we will be doing some more boat trips this year. But yeah, interesting. So is this like your thing, this boat trip that you
yeah,
do?
I do about 40 boat trips a year.
Oh, I
Put your
didn't
And
know
put your
this.
details in the
Yes, can
chat.
you put it in, can you message, can I email you afterwards and find
yeah,
out
yeah.
about
Now
this?
most of them to places like Ella and Jura and Iona, but we do 4 trips a year around Rathlin,
Oh,
and they're very cheap, they're only £30, and you get an amazing view both of the seals and of
what's the name
the
of the boat? What's the name of the company, Jim?
well, Jaybirds is the name of
Jaybirds.
Jaybirds. It's the J B and me.
Oh, okay, yeah, Jaybird.
And we have 500 people on our Facebook site, and we do about 40 trips a year, but mostly to to Scottish Islands and to places like Skellig Michael and Tiree and
Okay, oh, very
Saltings
good.
and things like that. But the Rathlin one is particularly special, and that's what all started, where we
Yeah,
started around Rathlin, and you just don't get anything of the impression of just the sheer numbers
Yeah.
until you've done it by boat. The boat is extraordinary, and you see things like dolphins and
could you
the
do a special boat trip for Ulster Wildlife members then,
oh,
Jim? Could you, like
yeah,
a
yeah.
discounted rate?
Well, if you can convince me you're under 18, you'd get half price.
Brilliant. Oh, that's great. Well, I'll have to go and look this up now. I look after all our events, so I will go and look up Jaybirds then after this or tomorrow, actually, probably. Um,
Can I
so
just say a massive thank you for everyone who's just sending such lovely stuff into the comments right now. It's
that's
really,
great, Ruby. You can see all those
I
comments. That's
can,
great,
yes.
can't you? There's a lovely hello from Germany, Ruby, as
So
well.
many
Maybe
different
thanks for the
places,
lovely
different
talk.
countries.
Yeah, Germany and Sweden tonight.
Amazing.
Love your book, can only recommend it. So there you go. That's fantastic. But yeah, just a huge thank you to Ruby and thanks for everyone for coming along tonight. And hopefully I'll see many more of you. And if it's not maybe someone from our team over the next few weeks. We will send you through a feedback form for this. So do let us know what you think of the talks, because again, we can improve these going forward. And if you have any questions again, yeah, just give us a shout and we'll send you the links to purchase Ruby's book as well if you're interested in doing that. And yes, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Happy
Bye, Ruby.
adventuring.
Thanks so much. And you can follow Ruby on social media as well. She's very active on social media if you want to keep up to date with her, with all of her conservation work and travels and everything else and Ballyconnelly Farm.
Thank you, Kelly. Thanks so
Okay.
much for having me.